Hi there, Jason here from English Raven. Hope you're doing well. This is tutorial 5 in my Teaching Materials Design Masterclass. Um, and this is an extension of what I did in tutorial 4, where I showed you one of the ways you could set up what I call a 1-3 design. That is one section for your content or your input, and then space for 3 applications that are nicely divided with some color and spacing, with your buttons ready to go, your header and footer is all ready to go. Now, if you watched that tutorial, you will have seen how I set up this template, and if that's what you're wondering how to do, I suggest you go back and look at tutorial number 4, as well as tutorials 1, 2, and 3, which show you how to do most of this kind of formatting. What I want to focus on with you in this tutorial, though, is actually now to start to put some content in. To cross that line between, just designing something and actually designing a layout or a template, and then actually what happens when you go to put content into that. Okay, so we're going to apply the 1-3 principle with these templates and tools we've already set up. Now, of course, what you need is content, don't you? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this document. Now, this is what I consider to be an important first stage in any material that you design, is that you actually just type it out. You research it, you type it out. In this case, I've just grabbed a dialogue that I made for some other resource somewhere. I'm using the 1-3 principle, so I've got a dialogue, and then I've got B, C, and D as applications of that dialogue. And I've got a title for it, and I've also gone and sourced a picture that I will use in this material. So this would, it looks pretty plain at the moment, and we could actually just take that in and give that to the students, of course, and that would be fine. But if you're looking for some, if you're looking to make stuff that's got that little bit more oomph and a few strategic things going on, if we were just to apply this, it's not easy to refer back to the dialogue. It's not easy to sort of get a big picture look of what we've learned so far, that sort of thing. But with our template set up like this, once we start to put the content in, you'll see what happens and how much better it looks, and how much more useful, in my opinion, it will be as a learning resource. So here's our template. The first thing we want to do, I guess, is to work with our title and our topic details based on this material we've prepared. So we double click to go back into our header and footer. Go back to our document. Now we're going to call this the Cappuccino Chat. Okay, so our title, well, this might be a section of materials that we're designing or that we've been adding to, and we might just call it conversation. That might be our general sort of thing. Whereas over here we'll actually put the title of the topic, topic title, which is the Cappuccino Chat. Okay, now that's sort of now you can see by having a template set up ready to go, we've got our general sort of type of resource and a space to put our title in. We've got our authorship indicated down there in the footer. We're ready to go. We're ready to put content in. We're ready to make something that looks pretty good. Okay, so go back out of your header and footer by clicking in the main section of your page. Now, what we're going to start with here is this dialog box. This was just a shape that we put in, a curved rectangle, which we then formatted a little bit in the previous lesson. So now I'm actually going to put the dialogue in here. Now, how do you do that? Well, one way you could do it is to click on the box and add text. Now, I'm not going to do that. All right? What I'm actually going to do is insert a brand new square, like so. I'm going to drag it over the top of this little box we've made. Then I'm going to right click to add text. Now you're thinking, that doesn't look very nice now. What's going on here? Well, let's put the dialogue in first. And this was just typed out in straight up font and that sort of thing, so we're going to need to do a little bit of formatting. Alright. Now I'm going to paste that dialogue into the box like that. Okay. Then what I'm actually going to do is click on the edge of this box so that just the squares turn up. I'm going to go to Format, what's already popped up for me. I'm going to get rid of the fill, and I'm going to get rid of the shape outline. And there you go, you can see it's now in the box. Why have I done that though? Well, it just gives me a little bit more freedom. I can move this text about. It's a floating transparent text box, and it just gives me a few more little options in terms of how this looks on the background box here. We can always reshape this to the text if we need to. Look, you could just click on that and add the text in, but just as a habit I don't do that. I create another layer over the top of my formatting just to give me a little bit more control and a few more options with the material. Now obviously we can resize this because we've got a lot of space in this box, and this is something we may want to produce up on the screen, and it's probably too small for the learners as well at that font size. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to increase it to about 14. Okay, alright, and what I'm actually going to do also is just go through and highlight the names. Okay, going to highlight these names. It'll just take a minute to go through and do all of them, so bear with me. And that's just easy if you're getting the learners to read this out loud or to do it as a role play or whatever. If the names of the characters are highlighted like this, it's a lot easier to find their place where it is their turn to talk. Now the other thing you can do to make this a little bit clearer is to move the dialogue away from the names, and that's just by going like this and hitting your tab key like that. And I'm going to do that for each one of these. You can see it's just a little bit easier to read now. Okay, now look at this. This looks ugly, doesn't it? It's just sitting out there. Well, all you got to do is hit tab next to that, go back to that, in front of that P in the line before, and hit backspace. Alright, do you want me to show you how I did that again? Alright, it used to look like this, okay, and the formatting came out all wonky. I've put my cursor in front of that word that's jutting out, I've hit my tab key, then I've gone back to the sentence before, gone back to the first letter, and hit backspace, and that's just lined it all up. Depending on what version of Word you're using, it'll often give you that option. Okay, now the text is at font size 14. You may like to play around with your font a little bit. This is in Calibri, which I think is good. It's a nice neutral one. And we might even just use Sego Print there, right? And move that back to 12. Alright, now that fits the box better. And see how now I can play with this text box because it's layered over the top. And that way I'm not losing stuff inside that yellow box. If I was to just whack this into the yellow box, some of this stuff would have ended up disappearing behind that layer of the box. But by putting a transparent text box like this over the top, I've just got those better options, either to move things like this or to move them closer to the edge. I can move it closer to the top. It is possible to use that insert text option, but I prefer to be a little bit more flexible. Okay. Now we've got our input text in. I'm going to pull this down a little bit, as well as this one. Alright, and that's just nice and clear there in the box there. Now you're looking at this from far away. If I go up closer, you can see. Now that font, that Sego Print font, you might be thinking, oh, that doesn't look, I'd like something that's a little bit more formal, which is fine, but one thing I like to think about is what sort of message am I sending to the learners? This is a conversation, it's a casual conversation. So sometimes I like to use a font that looks casual, that actually, has a casual flowing appearance. As long as it's legible, I think it's fine to use this kind of font. It looks more casual. It doesn't it looks more like a conversation. It doesn't look like something that's been typed. And that's always a bit of a problem I've had with conversational dialogues, is that when they're all done in nice formal print, sometimes they don't look like a conversation anymore. So I've done that for my formatting and put it in there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my picture, which I've already prepared, and that was down the bottom of the document, because now, with your picture, okay, make sure, right click on it, go to text wrapping, and make sure it's in front of the text, okay? In front of the text, because then you'll be able to cut and paste it into your other document without any sort of worries. So I've copied that. Now I'm going back to my my design document, and I'm going to press paste. Now you notice how there it just floated in over the top, and that's because of that text wrapping option. The fact that I put it in front of text means that when I drop it into this document, it doesn't push everything off the page and push everything down and push everything to the side. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've seen people struggle with materials design, is when they insert something, everything goes out of whack, everything gets pushed away and all over the place, and they go, ah, and they have to go back and they have to reformat everything. Sometimes it's just a matter of making sure all your stuff is floating in front of anything else on the page, so in front of text. Now I'm actually going to put this up here somewhere. Look, there's a variety of ways I could use this picture, but just like I showed you in the previous tutorial, I'm going to be a little bit flash with it. I'm going to twist it a little bit, give it a bit more sort of, wow, look at that. Alright, and shift it up a little bit. Now, can you remember how to move things behind the other text? Let's see if you can remember. First, I'll format this a little bit. I'll give it a little bit of a frame. Okay, like that, so it looks like a photo that we've whacked in. And then I'm going to go back to my format. Can you see here I've got this option up the top here? It says send to back. Okay, now Microsoft Word is just having a quick little think. Thank you. Right, send to back. Send to back. Okay, and there we go. It tucks in just behind our little dialogue there. Okay, it's tucking itself in there. Now you could put a little rubric here next to A if you like. Sometimes you just don't need to, though. Sometimes it's just clear. This is the first part, this is a dialogue. You could put in something that indicates that, or you could just leave it like that. I'm actually just going to leave it like that. I think that's sort of clear enough as it is. That's the first part of our resource, and that's a dialogue. You know, I don't want to get too much into stating some things that are obvious. Okay, so we've got number one. In our 1-3 design, we've got number one. We've got our input. We've got our dialogue. Now, because we've planned out our materials, we've already planned out our content. We've finished this part and we've used our picture. So B is going to be what I decided in this case would be comprehension. So we're going to move this section into here. We're going to put it in this part here. So we can give this, in this case I think it is good to put a little heading or something there. Again, it's all about your floating transparent text boxes. I know I keep going on about it, but I see people go into Microsoft Word and they click like this, and then they go tab, 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 or space, 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 and you know, they end up over here and then they try to type it in, and that's just not how you should do it. Alright, you'll drive yourself nuts doing that. See, look, I'm already driving myself nuts. Don't play around with that input text there. Use another text box. So go to insert, put in another square, drag it into the document where you want it to appear, right click on it, add text, and what was this going to be? Comprehension. So we say comprehension. Okay, now I'm going to make, because this is a sort of title of a section of an application, I'll go home. I'm going to go to Candara, which was our sort of headings font for this particular document. I'll bold it and I'll make it a bit bigger, like that. And I'm actually going to use a bolder color now. I'm going to use, let's say, I'll use a really bright blue. Don't know how that's going to look in the final product, but I can always change it. Alright, so our text box looks like that. We don't want it with the lines all over it like that, do we? So go to your format. When Microsoft Word catches up to what I'm doing, thank you very much. Okay, we'll just wait till that little bit. Thank you. Alright, shape, fill, no outline. Okay, and look, we've got a lovely heading there. And we can move it. Alright, we don't have to use space bars or back keys or anything like that. We can just slide it around until it sort of fits nice and neatly there. Okay, so B is going to be comprehension. We'll add another text box, and in any sort of given document, I normally have, at least 20 text boxes because I'm doing all sorts of things with the document. But it just gives me that control without upsetting the layout of the rest of the document. Now, going back to document 2, where our content is, we're just going to paste that in when it brings it up for me, of course. There it is. And we've already got our questions written out like this, so we'll just copy those, and then we'll go back to paste over here, and just by going home and pressing paste, or Control V. If you hold down Control and hit V, you can do it like that. Now, you notice how this has popped up in the text box? Okay, we can now play around with the formatting a little bit here, and we can reshape this text box because we don't need all of that, obviously. And I've got 3 questions. I'm fine with that. I might just make it a little bit bigger, just to make it a little bit clearer, and I might put in some bold here for these numbers, just to make them a little bit clearer as well. Okay. Now I could have maybe put in 4 questions if I like, but 3 was what I designed. I might come back to that later if I've got enough time and space. I could put in a 4th question, but for now I'm happy with that. So obviously we don't want a box like that though. That looks really sort of yuck. So we've already set out in our design the spaces, so we don't really need to box everything in here. So I'll go back to format, I'll get rid of this fill, and I'll get rid of this outline. And there you go. Okay, this is now floating there underneath comprehension. Give it a little bit of space away from the heading. And look at that, it's lovely and clear. We've got 3 comprehension questions. Now we may need to come back later depending on what happens in these 2 sections and resize or redo some of this, but for now it's kind of working. Our format is sort of doing what we want it to do. Okay, now we're going to go to section C, which in our master document here, in our content, we're going to look at the spoken language highlight. Now here's where we can do a little bit of cutting and pasting. Okay, we've already made a heading here, so rather than making a whole new text box and a whole new font and all that sort of thing, just highlight the box by clicking on the edge, copy that. Now don't paste from here. Click like this until your cursor appears back in the document itself, and then press paste. Otherwise you are pasting the text box inside the other text box, and you'll know what I mean if you play around with Microsoft Word and try that. And I'm just going to put that right about where the other one was. I'm going to go back to this document. This was the spoken language highlight, so this will be the spoken language highlight. Spoken language highlight. Okay, again, what I want to do is use a text box. Now I've already got one in a font that sort of works, so I'll copy that, click off it so that the cursor appears back in the document, and then press paste. Then click on that box so the lines appear, click on the edge and just pull it down. Okay, now looking at this, my master document had 9 words that I wanted to highlight, so I'm actually going to put those in 3 rows of 3 because I can do that in this document. Alright, so I'll highlight the first 3 to begin with. Okay, go back to here, and now I've highlighted that, get rid of it. Okay, now paste. And there's those 3 words there. Now I'm going to do something a little bit tricky here. I'm actually going to pull this right across like that. Okay. I'm going to copy that whole text box, click out of my document, paste it, and pull it over so that it's about where the other one is in terms of the height. Yeah, so you know, sometimes you've got to fidget around a little bit just to get it right. Now obviously I can see that this is going to fit nicely, but you know, I could probably make these a bit bigger because we've got enough space, and for these particular highlighted words we might like to make them a little bit more salient, a little bit easier to sort of notice. So what I'll do is I will make this a size 14. There we go. And that's just a little bit clearer. And then I'll do the same for this one, size 14. Now you might be thinking, why have I repeated that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this document. Now I'm going to highlight 4, 5 and 6 and copy them and go back to my material, highlight that, press paste, and there you go. Change it to size 14. Okay, good. Now we click on that box, we copy it, we click off the box to get the cursor back into the document, press paste again, click on it so the lines appear, and just click on the edge of it and drag it across. Okay, and as you can see we've lined it up. Now it's not quite perfect, we might need to do a little bit of fussing around. Okay, go back to this document here, highlight 7, 8, 9, copy those, go back to our design document and put in those ones. Again, we're going to have to resize that to 14. Now you may like to play around with your fonts and your bolds and that sort of thing. You may like to just play around until you get the sort of font and setting that you like. There's other things we could do with this. We could actually, I might actually do it actually. I'll show you when I get to the end of the document how I could make these look a little bit more special. Okay. So but anyway, we've done A, we've done B, we've done C. Now all we've got to do is part D. Okay, so what were we doing in part D? Right, D was continue the conversation. Okay, so let's copy by highlighting, pressing copy, clicking off the box, pressing paste, clicking in the box, grabbing the edge of that box and dragging. Drag that down to D. And that way we're keeping a consistent font and a consistent style with our headings. And now the idea here was continue the conversation. So we'll write here continue the conversation. Okay. Now that's going to be our section here. So what we can do is we could highlight any one of these boxes here. I'll go with this one because it's going to be something that has sort of okay, so I click on that, I press copy, click off it, press paste, and drag it down to the bottom down here like this. Go back to your input stuff and copy that, go back to our other document and paste it in. Okay, and again we could just highlight some of these. Now looking at our text now, we've still got plenty of space. You might have noticed it's nicely spaced out at the moment, but given that we might want to put this up on a screen, maybe we could just have a look at what happens if we make all of it a little bit bigger. If I stretch this text box, it'll fit in like that. And we could do the same here at the bottom. Obviously we've got enough room. You know, once you get to this stage, you may be thinking, well, how do I just resize it and make the best use of the room available? Or, you know, you may have room to put in extra content. You know, these sections B and D could have maybe gone to 4. based on the amount of space we have, but I'm happy with that. I'm happy with how it looks at the moment. I just want these to straighten up, so I'm going to go to, I've highlighted them together and I'm aligning them left, and then they all line up. Okay. What can we do to make this, already it's a pretty good looking little piece of material, but how could we make some of this a little bit better? I'm thinking that what we might do is actually do something with this part here. So what I'll do is I'll put in some, I'm going to insert, I'm going to shapes, I'm going to rounded rectangle, and what I'm going to do is, well actually I might not do that this time around, I might do it next time. Would you like to see it or not? Well, I'll show you how to do one, I'll get rid of it, and then we'll deal with that in another tutorial. Alright, but this is just a nifty way of highlighting certain things in your document. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until Microsoft catches up. Alright, I might go with say purple and make a purple outline, and then what I can do is I can send this to the back, and you notice how it goes behind the text, which I can then turn white and bold it. Now have a look how it looks now. Notice how much brighter that is. Purple's probably not, that dark bright purple's probably not what I was looking for this particular document, but can you see how I did it? I just pulled a rectangle over the top of the word, chose a color, sent it to the back, and then changed the color of the text. But look, we won't worry about that for this tutorial. Because what I really wanted to do was just show you how to cut and paste your material into your sections. Now, you might be thinking, looking at this section, if I was to print this, how would my learners, there's not enough space for my learners to write anything, which is fine, because I think if you're smart with your material, like in this case I would use this as a double-sided handout. Alright, I would actually use all my content and activity stuff here on the front, and I will then use the back, I'll make it a double-sided photocopy and use the back for them to take notes about each section. So if I do this, I'll show you what I'm going to do now. Okay, put in a text box like this and drag it up into this corner here. Now you might be thinking, what is that going to do? Well, I'll show you in a moment. That is what I call an orientation box. We're going to actually just use it to help us cut and paste text into the next page. Click on that box, click on each of the sequence markers and the headings that went with them. And you see how they all get highlighted there? How I did that was, I clicked on that box. Now I'm holding my shift key down and I'm not letting go, and I'm just clicking on each element once. Don't double click. Okay, now you notice how I did that? They're all highlighted now. Now just go back to home. You can either press Control C now or copy, and then just go down into your next page of your document. Click to put the cursor into that second page of your document. Now either press paste or Control V. Whoa, what's going on? Okay, now if you grab, now they're all still highlighted, so they'll all drag around together. You know, keep them highlighted like that, and then pull your square up to that corner again, and all these parts end up exactly where they were on that page there. Now I can get rid of that box, and I can get rid of that box, and everything's right where it was. Okay, now what's the point of this though? What's going on here? Okay, this is the back side of our document, and just by putting in the the letters here, but leaving everything else blank, our our background has already brought up all this formatting for us because we put it in the header and footer. What I can do is this can become a double-sided handout, and what happens is we say, right, we discuss the content here for A, and based on anything we do with that, the learners can flip over and write some notes about it here. For comprehension, here's the questions. They might then flip over and write their answers to those questions. The same for these spoken language highlights. They may actually take some notes in here about those spoken language highlights. And for continuing the conversation here, well, they could actually make some plans and notes about how they're going to continue the conversation down there. And I think that's a really good technique with your material, because if everything's all on one piece of paper, all their notes, all the answers, everything like that, it doesn't really test them that much. It doesn't. There's a disincentive to actually remember anything. Whereas if you get them to flip their paper so that they're constantly flipping it back and forth, they do need to remember stuff. So for example, where are these two people? If they flip their paper over and get to here, in this section they're going to write their answer, they think, hang on, what's the question? Where are, right, let's take a check again. Flip over, where are these two people? Right, where are these two people? Where are these two people? Then they'll write their answer. And I love doing that with my material because it just gets them to remember language, remember instructions, and it keeps the original input all fresh. A very good reference just by itself, but their notes are all included in a section on its own. And their notes can be separate, but it's on the same handout. It's just flipped. And also now this material, if we go to print preview, if I just make that a little bit larger, if we then put this up on the whiteboard, sorry, the screen for the learners on the interactive whiteboard or up on a beam projector, we're not having to put up something that's all empty with all these spaces in here somewhere for the learners to write answers. We can actually do it on the whiteboard like this as well. Okay, and if you're able to write on the whiteboard, an interactive whiteboard, you could be writing notes with the learners as you go through it up on the screen. But I like the fact now this is all just one piece of material. Look, it's not that spectacular, but it's functional. Our input is nice and clear here, and I just want to quickly explain what I meant by something I said earlier about using a landscape model here instead of a portrait model, like in terms of going horizontal with your page rather than vertical. Because of these sections here, it's a lot easier if that dialogue is next to those applications. It's a lot easier to look higher, fancy, It's a lot easier to do that by flicking your eyes left and right than it is to say look at this and then go down the page and look for that instruction. This works a lot better in my opinion for educational material because our input and our activities are nice and close to each other, but by putting this text box in here and making it yellow, we draw the eye, we've got a picture, we draw our eye to the initial input. So that's the Cappuccino Chat. That's our 1-3 design principle put into action. Just remember, it's always important to first script out your content in another document and to get an idea of how much of that there will be. It's a good idea to have a template set up that you can just go in and write in quick words here and there, and your sections are already set up for you. And then it's just a minimal amount of formatting in terms of just copying and pasting your rubrics and your input in there. But this is a pretty nifty little piece of material now. We have a conversation, we have 3 applications relevant to that conversation. We have a section on the back for photocopying purposes where the learners can write their own notes about the prompts that are here. In fact, if they even want to continue the conversation a lot, there's plenty of room for them to do that here as well. Excuse me. So it's a reasonably good looking piece of material, and you might like to use this for a range of conversations. It might be a section in your curriculum where you're designing your own conversations and your own applications of those. You could reuse these each time, or you could do something a little bit different each time. but it's nice and easy to use. It's good on the eye. It shows that you're a little bit professional in terms of the way you go about your materials design, and your learners are going to look at this and think, wow, my teacher's pretty special. Okay, so that's the 1-3 design in application to the Cappuccino Chat. Good luck with it. This is Jason from English Raven.